Hi friends, this is Steph. I hope you are doing well. I have some rather tired looking vegetables here in my kitchen. I pulled some from the freezer, some from the veggie bin. I have potatoes that are growing eyes, I guess you call them. Some tired looking Napa cabbage, a little bit of onion. There's some celery from the freezer and a zucchini that's starting to wrinkle that needs to be used up. I also found some summer sausage in the freezer and some mixed vegetables. So my go-to is always soup of some kind when I want to use up odds and ends. So I think I'm just going to go ahead and trim and dice everything and get it ready for my pot over here. I also have a can of diced tomatoes and a can of vegetable broth. I'll also be using a little bit of this Better Than Bouillon beef soup base. This is the roasted beef. And then of course I have my favorites, Italian seasoning, rosemary, onion and garlic powder, and salt and pepper. So let me go ahead and get everything prepared, and then I'll show you what it looks like before I start cooking it, okay? Okay guys, I'm making progress getting the vegetables cut and trimmed. Here's a little bit of zucchini. On this tray are potatoes and the Napa cabbage. I still have to cut the onion and the garlic and the celery. But I thought I would chat with you a little bit while I continue cutting up these vegetables. Most of you know that I'm a single lady. That's why a lot of my recipes or videos are titled Cooking for One. I've been single for many years, and it was not easy, but I will tell you what helped me, or who helped me through all these years, was the Lord. He saved me when I was in my 20s, and I was not one of those Christians that learned quickly. I had to learn a lot of things the hard way. And unfortunately, before I really learned and changed and grew up, I lost my marriage. And believe me when I tell you that it was my fault, much more than my ex-husband, who is a very kind and decent man. So all through the years, many times, I've cried out to the Lord for help. And he has always provided for me as far as food, clothing, shelter. My health has not been always the strongest, and so although I worked for many years, there have been years that I've just not been able to work. And he has provided for me financially in that I didn't have to work. For a lot of times I had cars that just were constantly breaking down, needing something or another, but yet there were always the finances there to pay for the repairs. And for a short period of time, I worked for a company that had a retirement plan. And after I couldn't work anymore, it turned out that I had accrued some retirement benefits, and if I used them in a proper way, that I would be able to use them immediately. I didn't have to pay taxes on them or anything. So I ended up being able to get a very nice car. So that was one way that the Lord went ahead for me to provide a good running vehicle, which is the one that I have now. He's always provided me with wonderful friends. This is a little tough. This is hard to cut because it's still half frozen. I should let it thaw a little bit longer. But anyway, so he has let me be a part of a community where the people have loved me, and for a period of time I owned a house, and one day they just showed up and put a new roof on my house. And someone else, anonymously, gave me $1,000, which I used to put carpeting and, different kinds of improvements on my house at that time. So over the years, my mother was getting older, and she lived in a city quite a distance from where I was working. So I quit my job and I moved down there. But I was always homesick for this little town that I'm living in right now. But again, the Lord had it worked out so that even though I had not lived in my own house for very long, the profits that I made on it were non-taxable. I just fell right in under the line. And so he made a way for me to spend a year with my mother, who died several years later. And I was not there, but at least I was able to be with her for a little while. And during that time, I developed arthritis really bad, so I couldn't work. But I was very homesick to come back here, and the Lord opened up a place for me to live. He gave me the finances that I needed to live there. And again, just always through the years, He has taken care of me. There have been many, many, good times, many heartbreaking times. One of the hardest that I really don't want to talk about, but I do want to mention, is that I lost one of my children. And I can tell you that without the Lord's help, I would not have been able to bear it. But somehow He gave grace to do what you have to do when the unbearable comes your way. I guess the reason I want to talk about these things with you today is that I know we're going through a really, really hard time here in our country. And I love this country. I love, love, love this country. And if you haven't guessed it by now, I have a great deal of appreciation for our president. I've lived through a number of administrations, and I've never seen anyone work so hard under such horrendous opposition as this man has. Why he doesn't just throw up his hands and say, all right, I'm done, you don't want me. But that's just not his nature. He is not a quitter, he's a fighter. Excuse me, I'm stepping over here to peel the garlic. But anyway, so I know we are going through a really, really hard time, and it could be very frightening for a lot of us. We don't know what's ahead. We don't know, this disease, what's going to happen financially. And I understand that that's a concern. But I just want to tell you that I never knew either, what the next day, what the next week, what the next hour would bring. But I can tell you that God has kept me all of these years, decades now, that He has sheltered me, protected me, provided for me, financially, physically, materially, spiritually. He has forgiven me when I have sinned. He has comforted me when I was brokenhearted. He has provided surprises for me. You've watched some of my videos, and I really enjoy having a pantry. But my friends, how long can even the most well-stocked pantry last? They won't last forever. So we have to believe and we have to trust in the Lord. One of the things that He taught me, I worked at a college for a year, and I got a salary. And I asked a very wise friend, and I had tithed prior to that, but I said, what do you think I should tithe on? Should I tithe on the net? Oh, I can't think of the other word right now. There's one amount that you get on the paycheck, and then the actual amount that you get in your hand after the taxes are removed. And his counsel to me was to tithe on the whole amount before the taxes were taken out. So again, this is not to build me up in any way. I just want to share this with you to encourage you and to encourage you to believe in God and to do what He says, because that's our way in this world. So anyway, I tithed on the whole amount, and again, He has always provided for me and more. I don't just have the basics of life, like some third world country. I have the things that I enjoy, that I like, the foods that I like. I live in a decent apartment, I have a transportation. So the Lord has always been very, very kind and generous to me. And I want to encourage, those of you who, I know how it is, life can get in the way, relationships, family things and that. But, if you feel the Lord tugging at your heart in any way, saying, come, I want you to come back to me. I want you to trust me in this. I want you to believe that I can provide for you when it looks like your pantry is going to be bare. I am still there and I will take care of you. I have resources that have nothing to do with the farmer's resources or the grocery resources. I will take care of my children, my people. And if the time comes, that you are going to die, I will be there with you. I was just finishing up my thought, and unfortunately my memory card was full, so I had to stop and unload it. And in the meantime, I put a little bit of oil in the pot here, and I'm going to saute off the onions and the garlic, the celery, and then just start adding in all the rest of the items, including the tomatoes and the broth and the seasonings, the cabbage and potatoes. And I'm just going to let that simmer until everything is nice and tender. And of course I'm going to check for seasoning, salt and pepper. Who knows, I might need a little pinch of sugar because I'm using tomato product. But given time, I think it's going to taste good. And near the very end, I'm going to cut up this piece of cauliflower, kind of set it on top so that it will steam. But before I do that, I just want to finish up my thought and just go back to John 3:16, which is what I was trying to say, where it says, "For God so loved the world that He gave His only begotten Son, that whosoever believes in Him should not perish but have everlasting life." And that's His heart's desire for us, is that, we don't perish, we don't go to hell because of a sin debt that we owe. His Son came willingly to go on the cross and receive the punishment for the sins that we deserved. And, if we will accept that, and if we will let Him come into our hearts and lives and be our Lord, we can trust that He will carry us through these days. And that's His desire for us. So, all right, my friends, I'm going to pick up sauteing all of these things and getting this soup on to cooking, okay? And I will see you in a little bit here. Okay, time to start adding the other things. Let me see, I think I'll do the potatoes and the cabbage. I'll be better to do it by hand. I don't know, guys, I might have to switch pots. I'm not sure. Let me see here. Got these vegetables to put in there. Yeah, I think I'm going to have to stop and get a bigger pot. I'll be right back. Okay, I had to get my 1 gallon pot out. All right, next I'm going to put in the vegetable broth. And I don't like to cook with tomatoes very often, but there's certain dishes that are okay. So I'm going to add the can of diced tomatoes. Stir that all up. And this is going to have to come to a boil. And I will add my seasonings. It's a beautiful color. Look at that. Isn't that gorgeous? I took a spoonful of that Better Than Bouillon soup base and mixed it with a little water. And I'm adding that. There's a little lump there, but it will dissolve. And then I'm adding some onion powder, the usual, some garlic powder, because I want lots and lots of flavor in here, some dried rosemary. All of these flavors go very well together. Some Italian seasoning. For now, just a little bit of salt, not too much. I can adjust that later on. And a nice big couple of grinds of black pepper. Okay. And I will bring you back when I do a little bit more to it. Whoops. Pay no attention to that noise in the background. I knocked over my pepper shaker. Okay guys, let's see if the potatoes are tender. Let's find one and break it up. Oh yeah. Okay, I've got this little bit of cauliflower that I'm just going to steam for about 10 minutes. Oh, that looks so good, and it smells good too. Okay, I think I'm going to give it a little bit more pepper. All right, put the lid back on and let it simmer for another 10 minutes. Okay guys, well, just like what I had to do earlier with the pot, I had to switch and get a different bowl. But this is what's for dinner: vegetable soup with cauliflower and zucchini, tomato, green beans, corn, potatoes, cabbage, and a little bit of meat. I tasted the broth and it just really tastes delicious. So that's what's for dinner on Thursday evening. Thank you so much, my friends, for stopping by, and I will see you soon.